Thank you. Good morning. Recognizing a quorum, I'm calling this meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission to order at 10:01 a.m. on May 13th, 2021. This meeting is being recorded. I'd like to thank Matt Giancola for managing the meeting logistics. As this meeting is being conducted remotely, all votes will be taken via roll call. And let me note that since we are currently operating with 4 commissioners under parliamentary procedures that were previously adopted by the commission, in case of a tie vote, the motion will fail. I expect this meeting to be done by approximately 1 p.m. Accordingly, we'll take a break in the morning sometime during the licensing votes when both Mr. Potvin and I need to catch our breaths, but I don't intend to take a lunch break if that's okay with my fellow commissioners. I have just a few opening comments, then I will offer the opportunity for opening comments by my fellow commissioners if they so wish before I go over the agenda. I'd like to recognize some legislative activities this week. First, the Senate Ways and Means Committee released its fiscal 21 budget, which called for fully funding our operating budget request for both the medical and the adult use programs. I know that there are several steps before this budget is finalized, but I would like to thank Chair Rodriguez and all of the other members of the committee for their support and confidence in the commission. Secondly, I'd also like to acknowledge the hearings conducted by the Joint Committee on Cannabis Policy this week. As a policy, the commission does not comment on specific legislation, but we are grateful, as I've noted in a letter that I sent to the chairs, we are grateful that the commission is giving careful consideration to our legislative requests, specifically with respect to clarity around host community agreements. My thanks to chairs Chang Diaz and Donahue for their leadership and more broadly for the support and collaboration of the entire legislature in building a safe and equitable industry. Let me offer the opportunity to my fellow commissioners if anybody wishes to make opening comments. Commissioner Stebbins.
All set. Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Concepcion.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, and then Commissioner Camargo.
I'm all set. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thanks very much. Then let me go through the agenda. If we get to that slide, please, Matt. Thank you. I've gone through 1 and 2. We have 2 sets of minutes for approval on today's meeting from November 30th of 2020 and January 14th of 2021. I'd like to thank, as always, Christopher Smith for keeping us up to date and honest on this and following the conversations that we have here. Thank you, Christopher. We have a standard executive director's report with both statistics on licensing as well as other matters. We have 6 staff recommendations for changes of ownership. We have 32 adult use renewals and 12 medical renewals. For final licenses, we have 15 adult use and 1 medical. And finally, for provisional licenses, we have 16 adult use. There are 4 topics for commission discussion and votes: guidance on seed to sale tracking. Let's see what else we've got here. Guidance on retail sale of hemp. We have staff recommendations on responsible vendor training. And if I could read my writing, we have a discussion on investment proposals that have been are being made to social equity and economic empowerment applicants. And I think all those are important topics. I'm looking forward to the conversation. There is no new business that I was unaware of when this agenda was posted. We'll go through the next meeting date and adjourn. As I said, my expectation is that this meeting will take approximately 1 hour. Or excuse me, will end by approximately 1 o'clock. Let me move on to minutes for approval. As I said, there are 2 sets of minutes, the first being November 30th, 2020. Are there any requests for edits or questions with respect to these minutes from my fellow commissioners? Then, yes, Commissioner Stebbins.
No, I was prepared to make a motion to adopt.
Okay. Well, you beat me to it. I was going to ask you to make a motion, please. So would you do so?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve the minutes of the November 30th, 2020 commission meeting, subject to amending the minutes to show roll call votes prior to publication on the commission's website.
Thank you very much. Can I have a second, please, of that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman. Aye. Let the record show that the commission voted 4-0 in favor of approving minutes from November 30th, 2020. The votes in favor were Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman, with no nay votes. Thank you. The next set of minutes are from January 14th, 2021. Do my fellow commissioners have any comments or requests for edits on these minutes? Okay, thank you. Then Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion?
Sure, Mr. Chair. I move that the commission approve the minutes of the January 14th, 2021 commission meeting, subject to amending the minutes to show roll call votes prior to publication on the commission's website.
Thank you very much. Can I have a second, please, of that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman. Let the record show that the commission approved the minutes from January 14th, 2021 by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman, with no votes, no nay votes. Thank you very much. I think that concludes this part of the meeting. So let's move on to the next agenda item. Mr. Executive Director, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Are you prepared to do your Executive Director report?
I believe that I am.
Then please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to you and the commission. Begin today with the usual data slides that are generally a download from our mass cannabis industry portal. First, some high-level highlights for your consideration. The first is there are currently 11 applications awaiting their first review. This is a step that occurs once an application and all 4 packets have been submitted to the commission. This number is on par with previous months and does represent 3 or 4 days or so to get to the first review of an application. You have before you today 16 applications that are recommended for provisional license. There are 58 applications that are awaiting a third-party response, which may be a municipal response or the background check component of the application. There are 153 applications awaiting a supplemental review. For context, those are applications that have been reopened for any particular reason, potentially more than once, and are then hitting into another queue, which requires a supplemental review from our staff. And as of this meeting, there are 94,631 certified active patients in the medical use of marijuana program.
So that seems like that last data point about certified active patients, it seems pretty flat from previous months. So is it fair to say that the spike that we saw this time last year is pretty much now kind of back to normal?
I agree. I think that's a plateaued number, and I think it's a stagnant number. What'll be interesting to watch over the next several months is those patients that return for renewal of their certifications. Given that this was the spike last year, we experienced right around this time that significant spike in medical use certifications.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? And please go ahead.
So this next slide here indicates really a high-level view of the portal itself and the overall activity. You'll see there's a total of 8,578 applications or licenses at this point. However, the vast majority or 6,616 are incomplete or have not yet been submitted. And then another significant tally of 844 have been withdrawn. The real activity, of course, is that there's 238 that are pending and 813 that have been approved as far as licenses. And then another 63 as far as the delivery only pre-certification. Delivery only, of course, at this point is for the courier license.
Right. Questions? Please go ahead.
This next slide here is based on license type, those 813 licenses. You'll see the majority, 333 of that of a marijuana retailer. Second most are 245 for that of a marijuana cultivator. And next highest, third highest is 187 for a product manufacturer, which does, of course, represent the majority of the supply chain. Of course, independent testing labs are a critical component as well, and you'll see that tally is at 11.
Questions? Okay, please keep going.
So this next slide here of the 876, again, that's the 813 licenses as well as the pre-certifications that have been offered or approved. 233 of those entities, or 26%, have actually commenced their operations. The majority, though, of 438, are in the provisional license phase. There's a number of steps they have to go through to get to that final license. Of course, an architectural review may be required if there's construction involved. And then, of course, the inspection from our inspectional staff, be it a compliance officer or investigator. So folks are moving through the process. And again, you see that about 26% of total licenses have actually commenced their operations.
Once again, any questions? Okay, please keep going.
This next slide here is a bit of workflow. You'll see that, again, as I indicated at the outset of this presentation, there's 11 that are awaiting our staff's review. There's 153 that we've requested more information from. We're waiting on third-party response from 58 entities. Again, that's a background check or a municipal response. And you have 16 applications before you today for your consideration. And then a combined delivery pre-certification or approval of the license or denial totals 880 total applications, or in some cases now licenses.
Once again, questions? You're on a roll. Keep going.
Don't mind if I do.
I actually had a question on that last slide.
Go ahead, Commissioner Concepcion.
I just want to make sure that I'm comprehending this the way that it's broken down. So all the applications that are listed aside from that last line where it says applications considered by commission are active, but that last component is not active as well, that have already been denied.
I'm not sure I'm following the question. So the 880 total is applications that have been approved or considered by the commission. That does include the 4 denials in the previous slide.
Okay,
it's also, as well as the pre-certification, which is a staff administrative process. Those entities may or may not have applied for a provisional license yet, but they may have. It's essentially the delivery courier license is a 2-phase process. First pre-certification, and then ultimately responding with a full application.
Okay.
So it's all of those combined.
I was wondering because you mentioned the denials being a part of that number, so that's helpful.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Keep going, please.
So this next slide here, excuse me, is a breakdown as far as priority or general applicants as well as expedited. You'll see that 260 applications have utilized the MTC priority status. 66 applications have utilized their economic empowerment priority status. There have been 296 applications that have enjoyed and used the expedited review. And to date, 500 applications are general applicants or not therefore prioritized or expedited. On the right-hand table, you'll see the breakdown of which mechanism was used to enjoy the expedited status, be it a license type, which again, as a reminder, is micro businesses, craft cooperatives, independent testing labs, and
Outdoor cultivation.
Outdoor cultivation was the final one. Thank you. You may also be a social equity program participant to enjoy the status. You may be a DBE, which requires some coordination with the Supplier Diversity Office for women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses. And some applicants, 28, actually secure the status based on a number or 2 or more qualification types. So, yeah, again, for a total of 296 have utilized that policy choice on the commission's a recent policy choice in the past. I believe it was a year and a half or so.
Questions? Please keep going.
This next slide is a breakdown of qualification types. So maybe economic empowerment applicant, social equity program participant, or that DBE status, and where they stand in the licensing workflow. So you'll see that 4 each for economic empowerment and social equity program participants have actually commenced their operations, as well as 18 disadvantaged business enterprises. However, the majority of these folks are working their way through the licensing process. Again, you see the provisional license, for instance, in the DBE status is at 72. Similarly, 27 social equity program participants enjoy a provisional license and 12 for economic empowerment applicants. And you also see, because of that exclusivity period, economic empowerment applicants as well as social equity program participants are working their way through that pre-certified or delivery endorsement microbusiness status. Again, pre-certification at this point is for the courier license for delivery. So this is just a breakdown of where those folks stand in the process and how they're working their way ultimately toward that ultimate goal of commencing their operations.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Sean, I see 95 total in the social equity program. Was it 99 on the last slide?
It was.
I want to make sure we have the right number.
It wasn't 99 on the last slide. That might be a math addition problem.
Okay. All right. No worries. We'll figure it out.
I will confirm that though. Thank you for raising that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? Please keep going.
I apologize for the appearance of this slide. It does appear to be an Excel spreadsheet nightmare, which of course is not my forte. That said, I do think there's valuable data in here that we certainly keep tabs on as a commission. This is normally included toward the end of the presentation or the end of the slide deck as far as an entire data presentation, but I thought it was worth bringing to the commission's attention. So this is, as Commissioner Doyle, former Commissioner Doyle used to put it, the pizza tracker in a way, which is showing progress. And the progress you would want to see here is applications moving from left to right. So again, as a pending application all the way to commence operations. Some key data points that I would just point out is that we have, for instance, 6 pending applications for delivery only provisional licenses. Those are folks that have already secured their pre-certification, have then gone out, certainly secured, hopefully some funding to support their business, but also a host community agreement and other requisite elements of the application, and have submitted an application for the commission's consideration. You also see tracking on the right-hand side following this table to the right, there have been 7 provisional licenses issued. They're certainly not yet, at least, a final license. However, as you get through your agenda today, you may find that to be an update. Similarly, you see that there's been 62 pre-certifications issued. There's also 16 more applications pending. So there's obviously a good deal of interest in that license type and also making progress toward that license. Another supply chain component that I mentioned earlier as being critical. I said there were 11 provisional license or commenced operations for independent testing labs. You also see here that there are 6 pending applications. So we're pleased to see that opportunity opening up and progress being made there. Similarly, you'll see that there's 47 marijuana cultivators that have commenced their operations. However, there are 149 entities that have provisional licenses. So supply is certainly in the queue and folks are working their way. Cultivation tends to be a very expensive and large build out and certainly could take some time. Similarly, on the product manufacturing side, you'll see there's 43 entities that have commenced their operations, 11 final licenses, but 107 provisional licenses. Again, to date, there's 131 entities on the marijuana retailer front that have commenced their operations. Another 154, though, that have a provisional license. So this is really that provisional license phase is, it creates a good deal of work for our staff, especially our investigators and compliance officers. And they're working through these collaboratively with licensees to get folks advancing through the process. Of course, it's largely up to the entity itself to demonstrate that progress and readiness to commence their operations. But this does shed some light on our workload as an agency and how we spend our time, especially in the field.
So, Mr. Executive Director, I wonder if you could comment on marijuana research facility. We have 7 pending applications there. Are those relatively new and kind of, when you say pending, I mean, how likely is it that we're going to see applications for provisional licenses in the not too distant future for that category?
Sure, it's a fair question. Thank you for asking it. It's as indicated at a few meetings ago now, as far as the regulation implementation phase. These are likely applications that were pending prior to that regulation change. So all of these pending applications have been notified that their applications are therefore on hold pending that adjustment in the application within the portal. So these would have predated that change. Mm-hmm. First, our priority is to roll out the delivery operator license type, which we're still expected to do this month. And then we'll pivot to both research licenses as well as the receivership licenses or that receivership process in the portal. So I expect I think the original estimate as far as regulation implementation was an August timeframe for that license type. And so we're hopefully still on track toward that, but first in the queue would be the delivery operator license. So these folks that have applied have been notified though that that is the process, and we've been in touch with them through our licensing staff.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions? Please go ahead, Dan.
And then this next slide here is our standard slide relative to the medical use of marijuana program in marijuana treatment centers. You'll see here that on the right-hand side of this table is that there are 8 final licenses and 79 entities have commenced their operations. And these are folks that are still working their way through the process. As a reminder, medical in the Commonwealth is vertically integrated. So a license does authorize the cultivation, the product manufacturing, as well as the dispensing of that product. So that the build out and the growth of that particular business is a bit more complex, also a lot more expensive, and therefore could be a little bit more time consuming. But folks have worked their way through this process, and we're certainly excited when there's an opportunity to have a medical operation commence their operations.
Okay, thank you. Again, questions? Please proceed, Mr. Executive Director.
So moving ahead here, the next few items are really relative to the administrative elements of the agency and the hiring process. As you know, if you follow our social media or any of our other channels, including our website or our LinkedIn, for instance, we've posted a lot of job opportunities here at the agency. That has been, I think, a really feverish pace. That's largely a credit to the legislature for providing us the requested funding back in December. So we've really tried to ramp up that process. There's a number of positions I just wanted to update the commission on. The first and second combined are the Director of Equity Programming and Community Outreach, as well as the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer. Both of those positions are in the final stages of the candidate identification process and are trending toward an offer stage. So we're closing out that process as we speak. We're also, as you know, hiring for a series of investigators as well as licensing specialists, both plural, and we are in the screening and interview stage for both of those positions. We are very pleased by the volume of applications we received. Of course, that does require us to then screen those applicants and build out the candidate pool to ensure that we're able to identify the best talent for this agency. So we're in the screening and interview phase or stages for both of those positions as well.
Could you,
Sure.
Mr. Executive Director, I'm sorry, could you comment on kind of the level of volume and interest we're seeing in those positions? We're getting an adequate source of applicants?
Sure, I would, without giving you specific numbers at the top of my head, I would say the investigator, I believe, was over 200 applications, potentially closer to the 250 range. And licensing specialist, I want to say, was on par with about 100 applications.
That's great. Thank you.
Again, that's my best guess based on, it's an informed guess, but a guess nonetheless.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Executive Director, anything else in your report?
Sure. There's 2 more positions I want to call your attention to that are active and posted right now. One, of course, closes tomorrow, so I would encourage anyone to seek that position, review the application, review the posting. If you're interested and inclined, please apply, which is the receptionist and office manager for our Worcester office. The next position is that of an executive assistant. The reason it has a parentheses plural is we're seeking 2 of those, and that position closes on the 17th, which is Monday. The next position is a project coordinator for community outreach in our communications office, and that position closes on May 28th and was just posted recently. So again, I would encourage anyone to review those postings, see if it's a good fit for you. If it is, I would encourage you to apply. And then the last item I would have, Mr. Chairman, just as an update for the commission, is that the advisory board of the Cannabis Control Commission, so the Cannabis Advisory Board, met on April 22nd. We had, I think, a productive, collaborative conversation. In that discussion, I also identified the liaison approach to the various subcommittees and made that introduction. So the next phase of those discussions should be the various subcommittees meeting, certainly encouraging commissioners to attend and engage in that liaison process and I believe each member was excited about the opportunity to collaborate directly with each of you in their capacity as both an advisory board member as well as members of the various subcommittees. So again, I think it was a productive conversation, and I know we're looking forward to re-energizing and re-engaging that advisory board throughout. I believe we said we're going to try to meet quarterly. I think that's going to be hopefully a good structure to keep that group engaged and moving forward as a valuable ingredient and tool for the commission's activities.
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Executive Director, I appreciate your leadership as the chairperson of the advisory board. Appreciate your leadership in making sure that we are engaged with them and that we're getting the benefit of their wisdom. So thank you.
Sean.
Are there? Go ahead, Commissioner Camargo.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Sean. So that I'm right here. So the receptionist and the office manager executive assistant application has 2 dates. So it says 14th and 17th. Can you just clarify that? So we all know?
Yeah, thank you. So the receptionist and office manager, that position closes on the 14th. The executive assistant post closes on the 17th. Sorry, that should have been clearer. And but that's they're 2 separate positions. The first of which is the receptionist, which closes on the 14th. The second of which is the executive assistant, and that closes on the 17th.
Okay. And Sean, just so you know, I got a message that I think the slide that I asked you about in terms of the 99 versus the 95, I think it's correct. I think it was just that it didn't include, the 95 didn't include, I think some pre-certification, so I think you're good.
That's a relief. Thank you.
Otherwise, Sean was going to be very upset with himself. So thank you for that.
So nobody messed up on the math. And
Commissioner Camargo, or Commissioner Concepcion, excuse me. Do you have a comment or question?
I had a quick question just for clarity about the executive assistant's positions.
Sure.
Just for clarity, so there are 2 positions, but there's 1 post. So if someone new will apply, that is for both positions.
That's exactly right. It's similar to our posting for both investigator as well as licensing specialist. We posted 1 position or 1 post and announced in that post that we would hire 10 investigators as well as 4 licensing specialists. So our intention would be to pull 2 candidates from 1 pool.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we move on? And,
I should have mentioned as well, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. We also, as part of our hiring process, have been hiring as well. And I mentioned at our last meeting that we had closed out the process for the press secretary, and Tara Smith has joined us as our press secretary at the agency. So I know our friends in the media that are participating or observing this meeting and engage with us on a regular basis will have the opportunity to meet with her, but wanted to certainly inform the commission that she began with the agency, I believe it was 10 days ago, right, on May 3rd. And she's hit the ground running and is someone that is already familiar with the topic and now getting familiar with the agency, and someone we're excited to have on board. So just wanted to call the commission's attention to that, as well as anyone that may be observing. So we're excited to have her on board.
Thank you for that. In the old days, what we would have done is had her stand up at one of our in-person meetings and given her a little grief. I'm sorry we can't do that in our virtual world, but welcome. I've had an opportunity to work with her over the last 10 days or so, and like Sean, I am delighted to have her on board.
I think, Mr. Chairman, when we do return to in-person meetings, we may have an audience full of new staff members. I would love to introduce to the agency.
We'll have to plan accordingly. Any other comments or questions before we move on?
Just thank you, Sean. Thank you for and thank you to staff for preparing all these slides. I know it's a process, so thank you. Nice job.
All the credit to our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director, and thank you to the staff. So let's move on to the next agenda item, which is staff recommendations on change of ownership. As long as we're acknowledging data issues, let me just apologize. When I was thanking the Senate Ways and Means Committee for the budget release, I said fiscal 21. I believe I intended to say fiscal 22. So my apologies for that misstatement. Mr. Potvin, are you ready?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. Thank you very much. Let's start. We have 6 changes of staff recommendations with respect to changes of ownership. We'll go through them individually, starting with Bud's Goods and Provisions Corp. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first licensee requesting a change of ownership and control is Bud's Good and Provisions Corp. They are seeking a change of ownership and control over 2 adult use licenses. They're requesting to add 6 individuals and 2 entities to those 2 licenses. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. With that said, Commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Any questions or concerns? Then could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Bud's Goods and Provisions?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation of change of ownership by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with no votes in opposition. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Caregiver Patient Connection LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Caregiver Patient Connection LLC. They're seeking a change of ownership and control over 1 adult use license. They're seeking to reorganize and add 2 entities to that license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or comments? Then could I ask Commissioner Concepcion, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Caregiver Patient Connection LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission approved the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Caregiver Patient Connection LLC by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Mr. Potvin, Ironstone Express Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here requesting a change of ownership and control is Ironstone Express Incorporated. They're seeking a change of ownership and control over 1 adult use license and are requesting 3 individuals and 1 entity to be added to that license. Additional information, again, is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or concerns? Then could I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Ironstone Express Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I ask for a second, please, Commissioner Camargo?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Ironstone Express Incorporated by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, is it Cripes LLC or Crippies?
Crippies LLC.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Crippies LLC. They're seeking a change of ownership and control over 1 adult use license. They're requesting to add 2 individuals and 1 entity to the license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or concerns? Then Commissioner Camargo, could I ask please for you to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Crippies LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I ask for a second, please, Commissioner Concepcion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Crippies LLC by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Mellow Fellows LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Mellow Fellows LLC. They're seeking a change of ownership and control over one adult use license. They're requesting to add 2 individuals and 1 entity to that license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or concerns? Then could I ask Commissioner Concepcion, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Mellow Fellows LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation on change of ownership by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Patient-Centric of Martha's Vineyard Limited.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here requesting a change of ownership and control is Patient-Centric of Martha's Vineyard Limited. They're seeking a change of ownership and control over 1 medical marijuana treatment center license and 3 adult use licenses. They're seeking to add 3 individuals and 3 entities to those licenses. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions or concerns? Then Commissioner Stebbins, could I ask you please to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Patient-Centric of Martha's Vineyard Limited?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I ask Commissioner Camargo to, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation on change of ownership for Patient-Centric of Martha's Vineyard Limited by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Is that it for changes of ownership at this point in time?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on then to the next set of licenses, which are renewals. Before we get into discussion and vote on these, I want to acknowledge Commissioner Camargo, who has taken a deep dive into the topic of renewals and the process around renewals, working very closely with our licensing staff on that. So thank you very much for your leadership on that, Commissioner Camargo. And I understand you'd like to make a few comments before we get into the actual discussion and vote, so please go ahead.
Sure. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to the licensing staff. I think as new commissioners, we're learning this process, and I talked a little bit about it last month in terms of really, at least for myself, and I know other commissioners as well, doing a deeper dive into renewals. I will be focusing my time here at the commission, really understanding the renewal process as it relates to diversity plans, positive impact plans, and specifically around the outcomes and the measurements of those plans. I would say to the applicants, the same planning that folks give to operations, to the product line, to security plans, should be the same attention that folks give to developing and implementing and revisiting their diversity and positive impact plans. I spent a lot of time, which is fine, it's part of my job and I love it, really looking into the renewals this past month. And something that really hit me was that you can tell that a lot of folks, and I know that it's really difficult, but they're scrambling at the end to do extra outreach, or the first time they're doing outreach, or to make the donation right before it's time to submit a renewal application. So really being mindful, the same way you work on your security plans that are so important. I want people to really, and I know folks take this seriously, but I want them to take it a little bit more seriously in terms of really rethinking their diversity plans and positive impact plans. It's a big responsibility to start a cannabis business. And I think for a lot of folks, who've watched, the new Spider-Man and Miles Morales, he said, with great power comes great responsibility. And ownership in the cannabis industry puts you in a position of power. And with this power, there comes responsibility to the individuals and the communities that were disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition and enforcement. So I want to remind folks that the commission is charged by state law to adopt procedures and policies to promote and encourage full participation in the regulatory cannabis industry by individuals from communities disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition and enforcement, and to positively impact those communities. And that's under the Massachusetts General Law 94G. So I think to applicants that are out there working in the renewal process, ask yourself and ask your team, what is your plan intentionally to have both a positive and measurable impact on individuals and communities that have been affected, and not just checking the box when it comes to renewal time. So, I have a 5-year appointment. I'm excited. And one of my priorities will be really taking a deep dive into renewals. So thank you, Chairman.
And again, thank you, Commissioner Camargo, for your leadership on this incredibly important topic. Deeply grateful. Before we get into the votes, any other questions or comments from my fellow commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Stebbins.
Oh, and just to echo Commissioner Camargo's points, and she raised this, as she pointed out at the last meeting, diving into some of these renewals, seeing what progress people were making on the positive impact plans and diversity plans. I think what's interesting about the group that we're starting to see now is that these were all folks who got renewed kind of on the cusp of the COVID shutdown, and it's been interesting to read where they feel they've made progress in what has obviously been a difficult and challenging year. So as we go ahead in the next few months, that will be the year from a COVID shutdown month. It'll be interesting to see the progress that many of them have made with a lot of those obstacles in place.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins. Any other comment? So part of the deep dive that Commissioner Camargo has taken on this topic has led her to request conditions on several of these renewals. In order to accommodate the discussion and vote on the request for conditions, what we're going to do slightly differently than what we've done in the past on renewals, we're going to look at this in 2 rosters, one for all the MTCs that are up for renewal. Second, all the adult use renewals that do not include those that Commissioner Camargo has asked for a condition on, and then one by one we'll go through the renewals that Commissioner Camargo has asked for a condition on. So my apologies in advance to Christopher Smith. I will speak as slowly as I know how, so you have a good chance of following this. But let me propose the first roster we consider are those adult use renewals that do not have requested conditions attached to them, and we'll vote as a roster on these. And so let me read them out. Adult use renewal applications A, B, C, D, E, I, J, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, double A, double C, double D, double E, and double F. So again, those are adult use renewals that we will consider as a roster with no additional conditions requested. Mr. Potvin, before I ask for a motion and a vote, would you do your normal overview, please, of those?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. So a part of that roster, and as well as I would say encompassing all of them, I would say that the licensees here did submit a renewal application meeting all of the requirements, including updated letters of certificates of good standing, stating any progress or success that they did have towards their positive impact and diversity plans. They did pay their appropriate annual license fee, and there's no information, to the best of the staff's knowledge, that would prevent the renewal of these licenses. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision, and request that your approval be subject to the conditions already listed on the executive order.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bachman. Any questions or comments before I ask for a motion to vote on the roster I just went through? Then Commissioner Concepcion, could I ask you please to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue renewals to the roster that I just read, subject to conditions articulated by Mr. Potvin?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission approved the staff recommendation on renewals for the roster that I just mentioned by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. What I'm going to propose next is we go one by one through licenses that Commissioner Camargo will request conditions around, or renewals that Commissioner Camargo will present or request conditions around. We'll be able to handle some of these in a bunch, because several of them relate to multiple renewals from the same company. But let me start. And there are 3 from Cresco HHH LLC, F, G, and H on this roster. And the condition that Commissioner Camargo is proposing is that within 90 days, the licensee shall provide notification to the Cannabis Control Commission on how a donation to the New York Urban League promotes and encourages full participation in the regulated cannabis industry by individuals from communities disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition and enforcement, and to positively impact those communities under MGL Chapter 96G, Section 4 in Massachusetts. So again, what is on the table right now is a vote on the staff recommendation for renewal for F, G, and H, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Camargo. Before I ask for such a motion, are there questions or comments?
And can I just?
So go ahead, please, Commissioner Camargo.
Yeah, can I just say they've done a great job of giving back and preparing for renewal. So I don't want to dismiss that, but definitely want that condition. So.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Then Commissioner Stebbins, could I please ask you to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation for renewals for licenses F, G, and H, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission approves the staff recommendation to issue renewals to Cresco HHH LLC, items F, G, and H on the roster, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Margo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Next on the roster is K, Emerald Grove Incorporated. The additional condition requested by Commissioner Camargo on this renewal is within 90 days, the licensee shall provide notification to the Cannabis Control Commission by resubmitting an updated letter from Onset Bay Associated dated 5/2019 to reflect current date. Commissioner Camargo, any further elucidation on that?
Yeah, I think you know, a lot of applicants, we all know this, are partnering up with nonprofit organizations. And the reality of it is, for some folks, they have letters from 2019. And the reality of it is that nonprofits shut down at sometimes there's new leadership. And I think it's just good practice to, if you're submitting a renewal in May of 2021, that you go back and make sure that partnership is still legit and that the person who wrote you that letter 2 years ago is still there. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions before I ask for a motion?
Do you mind, Mr. Chair, just repeating the condition? I don't know if it was clear
Sure.
about.
Absolutely, no problem. So the condition proposed is within 90 days, the licensee shall provide notification to the Cannabis Control Commission by resubmitting an updated letter from Onset Bay Association dated May of 2019 to reflect current date.
Mr. Chair, just a quick.
Hold on 1 second, please, Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Concepcion, does that respond to your question, or do you have a follow-up question?
I just don't know if I'm hearing that. If that makes Commissioner Camargo, I understand you want an updated letter to reflect the current partnership beyond the 2019 letter. I don't know if that condition
Do you have a recommendation on editing it?
Yeah, I just the date maybe changing just the way that I'm sorry, I'm thinking off the top of my mind, just a more recent from 2021, a letter, so saying not 2019.
So instead of saying to reflect current date, you're proposing say
to reflect current date is fine. It was just the additional language is what threw me off. The language that said reflect current date and then it said something May 2019.
No, let me just do it again one more time. It says within 90 days, the licensee shall provide notification to the Cannabis Control Commission by resubmitting an updated letter from Onset Bay Association dated 5/2019 to reflect current date. So I think the confusion is to resubmit an updated letter that was originally dated 5/2019 to reflect the current date. So if we just make that little change, does that work?
That works.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Just a quick question for clarification, Commissioner Camargo, when you say within 90 days, we're saying within 90 days of our vote on their renewal, correct?
Correct. And I did speak to licensing. Thank you for that question, Commissioner Stebbins. I asked licensing sort of the operational piece to this, so they'll get notified after today or tomorrow. So they'll have 90 days from the day that they receive their notification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you proposing a modification to the language here, Commissioner Stebbins, or are you comfortable as it is?
No, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion I'm going to ask for, it takes the, I'll read it again, but it takes Commissioner Camargo's proposed condition and just adds one word. So the condition right now that I'd like to ask for a motion to vote on is within 90 days, the licensee shall provide notification to the Cannabis Control Commission by resubmitting an updated letter from Onset Bay Association originally dated May of 2019 to reflect current date. Great.
Perfect.
Okay. So in that case, could I ask, please, Commissioner Camargo, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a renewal to Emerald Grove Incorporated, item K on the roster, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a renewal to Emerald Grove Incorporated, item K on the roster with a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, we have 2 renewal applications from Glacier Rock Farm Incorporated, items L and M on the roster, and the proposed condition from Commissioner Camargo, additional condition, is within 90 days, the licensee shall provide notification to the Cannabis Control Commission by resubmitting an updated letter from Amherst Survival Center. I'm going to put in the word originally, dated March 10th, 2020 to reflect current date. Commissioner Camargo, any additional comments?
Nope.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, then could I ask please for a motion, Commissioner Concepcion, to approve the staff recommendation to issue renewals to Glacier Rock Farm Incorporated, items L and M on the roster, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please, Commissioner Stebbins?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that the motion was made by Commissioner Concepcion, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman. Aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue renewals to Glacier Rock Farm Incorporated, items L and M on the roster by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. The next and last of the conditions requested by Commissioner Camargo is item B, solar therapeutics. The additional condition requested by Commissioner Camargo is within 90 days, the licensee shall provide notification to the Cannabis Control Commission on how a donation to Somerset Police Union, and Somerset Fire promotes and encourages full participation in the regulated cannabis industry by individuals from communities disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition and enforcement, and to positively impact those communities under MGL Chapter 94G, Section 4 in Massachusetts. Commissioner Camargo, any additional comments on this proposed condition?
Nope.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Then could I ask, please, Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a renewal to Solar Therapeutics, item BB on this agenda, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let's make sure that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue renewal to Solar Therapeutics, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. The next and last part of this set of recommendations from staff on renewals are for MTC renewals, which constitute items GG to RR, or double G to double R on this roster. I am not aware of any additional requests for conditions on these renewals. Before I ask for a motion and a vote, are there comments or questions? Then could I ask, please, Commissioner Camargo, could you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue issue renewals to items GG through RR on this roster?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue renewals to items GG through RR on this roster by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Mr. Potvin, are we done with renewals?
At this time, yes, we are, Mr. Chairman.
You were taking a little break there, huh?
Chairman.
Yes, I'm sorry. Commissioner Camargo, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just quick couple of comments on the renewals. One is I just to echo Commissioner Stebbins' comments earlier about COVID and the reality where we've been. So I definitely want to respect that. In the process of reading a lot of applications, a lot of renewal applications, there are some really good things happening. There's folks who are not yet operational but are still uploading and letting us know that there hasn't been too much progress, but that they've done X, Y, and Z to get ready for opening. So I kind of just want to mention that because I know a lot of folks are not operational. The other piece of it too, I want to just give a shout out to a company called Major Bloom. They're economic empowerment company that is up for renewals. They have, I think, exceeded their sort of give back and not operational yet. So I think, folks are out there, I guess, check them out, reach out to them. And also Resonate seems to be another company that is partnering up with Major Bloom as part of their positive impact plan to support and collaborate with them. So I think there's very creative ways to partner with other companies, whether they're EEs or DBEs, and so on and so forth. And I think the other one too is Mayflower. They've created a really good fellowship, and once they are finally, operation and everything else, I'm looking forward to it. But there's definitely a lot of good work happening, and I just wanted to mention that. Thank
you very much. Appreciate that. Other comments or questions before we move on to final licenses? Okay, as is the case in the past, what we'll do with final licenses is we'll vote on a roster of all the adult use finals, and then there's one MTC final license, which we'll vote on separately. So right now on the table, I propose that we consider the roster from A through O, which are all adult use final licenses. Unless there's a reason to remove any one of them from the roster, I'd like to consider this roster as a whole. Are there any requests to remove one or more of these licenses from the roster that we consider? Okay, then Commissioner Concepcion, could I please ask for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue final licenses to the roster A through O?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Let the record show that the Commission approved staff recommendation to issue final licenses to items A through O on the roster by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. I, at this point, would like to thank my executive director for stealing my thunder, but you will all notice that item N on this agenda, We Can Deliver Boston LLC, is a marijuana courier. This is the first marijuana courier final license that we've issued. It will not be the last by a long stretch, but I think it's really important to recognize this milestone. It's an incredibly important part, as you all know, of our quest for equity in this industry, as well as being responsive to customer requests. I wish them the best of luck, but I think, as you said, it's very important just to notice this milestone, but to very explicitly recognize that we still have a lot of work to do, and there'll be many more of these.
Chairman, if I can add.
Yes, please go ahead.
Just want to say, congratulations to them and being the first courier. I know there's so many folks out there that are looking to do the same thing. And I know that they, as owners, from just reading, have been mentoring a lot of folks. And I believe they're also part of the social equity program cohort too. So I wanted to just put that out there. So congratulations.
Thank you. Any other comments? And again, thank you, Mr. Executive Director, for stealing my thunder on that.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Anytime, right?
Chairman, let's get more through the process, and you'll have more time to celebrate more.
Go ahead, please. The next item is one. Well, it's not a roster. It's just one final license on the medical side. It's P in Good Health Incorporated. Are there any concerns or questions before I ask for a motion on this? Then Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to In Good Health Incorporated, RMD 3305?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a final license to In Good Health Incorporated by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Mr. Potvin, are there any additional final licenses at this point in time?
Not at this point in time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. What I'm going to suggest, if it's okay with both Mr. Potvin and my fellow commissioners, is let's get started. Do maybe a half a dozen of the provisionals. I think there's a total of 16, if I'm correct. Let's get part way into the list, and then I know I could use a break, and I'm presuming you could as well. But I won't put that onus on you. I'll just request a break after we get through maybe the first 5 or 6 of these. Okay. If that's all right for everybody, let's move in. The first is Advisa or Adves. Again, pronunciation assistance would be appreciated, Mr. Potvin. Advisa.
I've been calling it Advesa.
Okay, I'm going to go with you. Advesa Mass Incorporated, and there are 2 of them. They're both retail. The first is, I believe, in Somerville, and then the second one is in Cambridge. So let's discuss the first one, which is the Somerville application number A. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize to the applicant if I am pronouncing their business name incorrect. But the applicant here is Advesa Mass MA Incorporated. They are proposing to do business at 690 Broadway, located in Somerville. They are seeking a retail license. This application did receive priority review, as the majority of the ownership is held by economic empowerment priority applicants. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. My apologies for not mentioning it was an economic empowerment applicant, but thank you for adding that. I am not aware of any requests for additional conditions on this license, but are there questions or comments or requests for additional conditions? Then could I ask Commissioner Concepcion, please, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Advesa Mass Incorporated? And I'm going to do the number here just to separate it from the next one, MRN 281454. Could you make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. I let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Advesa Mass Incorporated, MRN 281454, by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next is a second recommendation from the staff for a provisional license to Advesa Mass Incorporated, this one being MRN 284113, also retail, this one being in Cambridge. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant again here is Advesa MA Incorporated. They're proposing to do business at 966 Cambridge Street, located in Cambridge. Again, they are seeking now a second retail provisional license. Again, they did receive priority review, as the majority of the ownership is held by economic empowerment priority applicants. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any additional conditions being requested on this license, but are there comments or questions?
Chairman, just
Yes, go ahead, please.
comment, but I think I'll make it after we vote on it.
After we vote on this license or after we vote on all the provisionals?
Just this one.
Okay, fine, no problem. Then could I ask, since you have the floor, Commissioner Camargo, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Advesa Mass Incorporated, MRN 284113?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Advesa Mass Incorporated, MRN 284113, with a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Go ahead, please, Commissioner Camargo.
Yeah, I just want to give them a sort of a kudos. Their positive impact plan and diversity plan was well thought out, intentional, and really hits the charge of the commission. So I'm looking forward to, the process and progress for them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Camargo. Next up, Mr. Potvin is Calyx Peak of Massachusetts Incorporated, retail. This is a general applicant. Please go ahead, Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Calyx Peak of MA Incorporated. They're proposing to do business at 16 New Ocean Street located in Swampscott. They are seeking a retail license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have a request for additional conditions from Commissioner Stebbins. First being prior to final application for licensure, review positive impact plan and update any strategy for outreach to residents of disproportionate impact designated communities in closer proximity to the proposed Swampscott location. Second, prior to final application for licensure, identify how contribution to cultivated may assist applicants' Swampscott operations. Are there any other questions or comments or requests for additional conditions on this license? Okay. Then could I ask, please, Commissioner Concepcion, would you please make a motion to approve staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Calyx Peak of Massachusetts, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman. I let the record show the commission approved staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Calyx Peak of Massachusetts Incorporated, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman, none opposed. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, we have Herba C3 Dorchester LLC, which is retail. This is also a general applicant. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Herba C3 Dorchester LLC. They're proposing to do business at 43 Freeport Street located in Boston. They are seeking a retail license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests for additional conditions here from all 3 of my fellow commissioners. Let me start with Commissioner Stebbins. His requested additional condition is prior to final application for licensure, identify any hiring goals for veterans, individuals with disabilities, and LGBTQ residents. From Commissioner Concepcion, her requested additional condition is clarify eligibility requirements for a proposed educational grant program. And from Commissioner Camargo, it is provide clarification on how a donation to Cultivated will directly impact specified cohort. Are there any other comments or requests for additional conditions on this application?
I just wanted to add a comment.
Yeah, please go ahead, Commissioner.
So I would just advise, or, just an aside, in addition to my condition, is just taking a second look at that positive impact plan, because it seems like there was really just some missing words that would have provided what I'm seeking, the eligibility requirements. So that was just in addition to what the condition prescribes.
Okay, thank you. Other conditions or questions on this application? Okay, then Commissioner Concepcion, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Herba C3 Dorchester LLC, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins, Concepcion, and Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Herba C3 Dorchester LLC, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins, Concepcion, and Camargo. Thank you. Next up, We have JWC WIC LLC, which is retail, and this was an expedited license based upon the status as a veteran-owned business. Mr. Potvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is JWTC WIC LLC. They're proposing to do business at 264 Newburyport Turnpike, located in Raleigh. They are seeking a retail license. As you stated, this application did receive expedited review as it is a veteran-owned business. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests both from Commissioner Camargo and Commissioner Stebbins for additional conditions on this license. Let me start with Commissioner Camargo. Her requested additional condition is provide clarification on how a donation to New England Veterans Association will directly impact specified cohort. From Commissioner Stebbins, his requested additional condition is prior to final application for licensure, identify any hiring goals for women, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and LGBTQ residents. Are there any other questions or requests for additional conditions on this license application? Okay, thank you. Then I believe it's your turn, Mr. Stebbins, or Commissioner Stebbins. Could I ask you please to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to JWTC WIC LLC, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins and Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, could I ask you to second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman. Let the record show the Commission approves staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to JWTC WIC LLC, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. I believe the next 3 are co-located, Mr. Potvin, is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, why don't we go through then the next 3, F, G, and H, and then we'll take a break right afterwards. So please go ahead. 3 applications from Main Street Medicinals LLC, Tier 1 cultivation, product manufacturer, and retail. And I believe that this is a general applicant. Please go ahead, Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Main Street Medicinals LLC. They're proposing to do business at 65 Mechanic Street, located in Tisbury. They are seeking a Tier 1 indoor cultivation, product manufacturing, and retail license at this location. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the Commission's review and consideration. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of 3 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you. I have requests from both Commissioners Camargo and Commissioner Stebbins for additional conditions on all 3 of these licenses. Let me first read Commissioner Camargo's requested additional condition, which is to resubmit positive impact plan to include more than hiring that promotes and encourages full participation in the regulated cannabis industry by individuals from communities disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition and enforcement, and to positively impact those communities under MGL Chapter 94G, Section 4 in Massachusetts. With respect to these 3 licenses, Commissioner Stebbins has requested 2 additional conditions. First, prior to final application for licensure, assess progress in recruiting and hiring from target areas and amend PIP as necessary. Second, prior to final application for licensure, identify any hiring goals for veterans, individuals with disabilities, and LGBTQ residents. Are there any additional questions or conditions requested on these 3 applications? Okay, then we'll vote on each of them separately, starting with the first, Main Street Medicinals LLC, MCN 283352, Tier 1 cultivation. Could I have a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Camargo and Stebbins? Could I have such a motion, please, Commissioner Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please, Commissioner Concepcion?
Second.
Thank you. Let's make sure that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. I let the record show the commission approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Main Street Medicinals LLC, MCN 283352, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Next, please, Commissioner Concepcion, could I ask for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Main Street Medicinals LLC, MPN 282026, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please, Commissioner Stebbins?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. I let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Main Street Medicinals LLC, MPN 282026, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Finally, Commissioner Stebbins, could I ask please for a motion on the last of the Main Street Medicinal license applications, MRN 283992. Could I ask please for a motion to approve the staff recommendation subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins and Camargo?
Moved.
I'm sorry.
So moved.
Thank you very much. And could I have a second, please, Commissioner Camargo?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Main Street Medicinals LLC, MRN 283992. Subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. At this point in time, I know I could use a break, so I'm going to propose that we take a break. It is now 11:22. If we reconvened at 11:35, would that work for everybody? So we are in recess until 11:35 a.m. Thank you very much.
Present.
Thank you.
Present.
Thank you. We got one more minute.
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, it is a 11:35 a.m. and the commission is back in session. Mr. Potvin, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm having a great day, Mr. Chairman.
I am so glad to hear that. Let us keep going then. We have two applications from Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity LLC, both for retail, but separate locations, both in Boston. This is a general applicant. Let's start with the first, please, MRN 284009. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity LLC. They're proposing to do business at 561 Dudley Street, located in Boston. They are seeking a retail license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any additional conditions requested on this application. Are there questions or comments? And I'm not sure who I called on last. I apologize, but let me start with Commissioner Camargo, please. Would you make a motion then to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity LLC, MRN 284009?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please. Commissioner Camargo?
Aye. Sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity LLC, MRN 284009 by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, is a second application from Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity LLC, MRN 284097, also retail. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant again here is Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity LLC. They're proposing to do business at 3995-3997 Washington Street, located in Boston. They are seeking a second retail provisional license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Again, I'm not aware of any additional conditions being requested on this application. Are there questions or comments? Then Commissioner Concepcion, could I ask you please to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity LLC, MRN 284097?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Massachusetts Citizens for Social Equity LLC, MRN 284097 by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, is Mass Biotics Incorporated, Tier 2 Indoor Cultivation, and this is also a general applicant, I believe. Please go ahead, Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Mass Biotics Incorporated. They're proposing to do business at 35 Armory Street, located in Worcester. They are seeking a Tier 2 indoor cultivation license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests for additional conditions on this license from Commissioner Stebbins and Camargo. From Commissioner Stebbins first, prior to final application for licensure, identify any hiring goals for individuals with disabilities and LGBTQ residents. From Commissioner Camargo, her additional condition requested is resubmit diversity plan to include more than hiring that promotes and encourages full participation in the regulated cannabis industry by individuals from communities disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition and enforcement, and to positively impact those communities under MGL Chapter 94G, Section 4 in Massachusetts. Are there any other conditions or requests for information on this application before I ask for a motion? Then Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Mass Biotics Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins and Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please, Commissioner Camargo?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Mass Biotics Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman, with none opposed. Thank you. The next application is from Paper Grain Provisionals LLC, which is Tier 6 outdoor cultivation. I believe that this is a social equity applicant and also expedited based upon the type of license. Is that correct, Mr. Potvin?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. The applicant here is Paper Crane Provisions LLC. They're proposing to do business at 56 Gardner Street, Suite D in Hubbardston. They are seeking a Tier 6 outdoor cultivation license. The application here did receive expedited review as the majority ownership is held by a social equity participant and also because it's an outdoor license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. I have requests for additional conditions on this license from both Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo. Commissioner Camargo's requested additional condition is prior to final licensure, contact Cannabis Control Commission Licensing Division to include letters for partnership activities. From Commissioner Stebbins, I have a request for additional condition, which is prior to final application for licensure, identify any hiring goals for veterans and individuals with disabilities. Are there any additional questions or requests for additional conditions on this license? Then could I ask Commissioner Camargo, could you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Paper Crane Provisions LLC, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion, could I ask you to second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that the motion was made by Commissioner Camargo and seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. I let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Paper Crane Provisions LLC, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman, with none opposed. Thank you. Next, we have River Valley Growers Incorporated, which is Tier 11 outdoor cultivation. This was expedited based upon license type. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is River Valley Growers Incorporated. They're proposing to do business at Bashan Road Lot 12 on map 202 located in Hatfield. They are seeking a Tier 11 outdoor cultivation license. This application did receive expedited review due to the fact that they are seeking an outdoor cultivation license. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much. I have a request for 2 additional conditions from Commissioner Camargo on this application. First, resubmit diversity plan to include more than hiring, that it promotes and encourages full participation in the regulated cannabis industry by individuals from communities disproportionately harmed by cannabis prohibition and enforcement, and to positively impact those communities under MGL Chapter 94G, Section 4 in Massachusetts. The second additional condition that I have a request from Commissioner Camargo to impose is to revise and resubmit positive impact plan to acknowledge the CCG partnership as a goal as it relates to GCC's Farm and Food Systems curriculum and GCC's Plant and Soil Science curriculum. Are there any other questions or requests for additional conditions on this application? Then could I ask Commissioner Concepcion, please, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to River Valley Growers Incorporated, subject to the additional condition requested or conditions requested by Commissioner Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let's record Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, second by Commissioner Concepcion, or Commissioner Stebbins, excuse me. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to River Valley Growers Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, the Greenhouse Cannabis Group Incorporated, which is a marijuana courier license. This was expedited based upon the applicant's status as a social equity program condition or participant. Please go ahead, Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is the Greenhouse Cannabis Group Incorporated. They're proposing to do business as Greenhouse Mobility Solutions. Their location is proposed at 41 East Main Street, Unit A in Montague. They are seeking a marijuana courier license. This applicant was pre-certified for this license type back in July of 2020. Again, they did receive expedited review as the majority of the ownership is held by a social equity participant. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests for additional conditions from both Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo. There are 2 additional conditions requested by Commissioner Camargo. First, prior to final licensure, submit to the Cannabis Control Commission Licensing Division an updated list of confirmed selected partners, eligibility to support your activities, specifically the colleges mentioned in the plan. Second, revise, resubmit, and provide clarity on diversity plan as it relates to the following sentence. Quote, another goal for the first year of operation is to produce a minimum of 10 individuals from under-resourced and underrepresented backgrounds. Add as a goal and explain intended outcome. From Commissioner Stebbins, I have a request for additional condition on this application. Prior to final application for licensure, review diversity hiring goals and projected number of employees and provide any updates. Are there any other questions or requests for additional conditions on this license? Then Commissioner Stebbins, please, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to the Greenhouse Cannabis Group Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins and Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to the Greenhouse Cannabis Group Incorporated, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins and Camargo by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, we have 2 applications from Wingwell LLC. These are co-located. Correct, Mr. Potvin?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and both of these applications were expedited based upon their status as minority-owned businesses. Please go ahead, Mr. Potvin. Go through both of them, and then we'll have separate votes on each license application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Wingwell LLC. They're proposing to do business as Wingwell Cultivation Manufacturing LLC. Their proposed location is 4145 Church Street, Building 10 in Palmer. They are seeking a Tier 3 indoor cultivation and a product manufacturing license. Again, both applications did receive expedited review as the majority ownership is held by a minority-owned business. Additional information is contained within the executive summary for the commission's review and consideration. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of 2 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. So I have a request for additional conditions on the license from Commissioner Stebbins and Concepcion. Commissioner Stebbins, the condition you have here would apply to both licenses. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins is prior to final application for licensure, review and provide an update for immediate diversity hiring goals and projected number of immediate hires and identify any hiring goals for veterans. Commissioner Concepcion has requested a condition on both licenses, the same condition, which is prior to final licensure, the applicant must provide a standard operating procedure to commission staff relating to its security procedures and applies directly to the applicant's facilities. Are there any additional requests for conditions or questions on this license application or these 2 license applications? Then could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Wingwell LLC MCN 281484, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins and Concepcion?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Wingwell LLC MCN 281484 by a vote of 4, or with subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins and Concepcion by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with no negative votes. Thank you. Next up, please, if I could, Commissioner Concepcion, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Wingwell LLC MPN 281363, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Concepcion?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Wingwell LLC MPN 281363, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Stebbins and Concepcion by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Mr. Potvin, do we have any other provisional licenses to consider at this point in time?
No, we do not, Mr. Chairman.
Well, then, as always, Mr. Potvin, to you and your staff, thank you so much. I know the amount of work that goes into each of these, and really appreciate the effort. And I have great confidence in this process. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item?
I just want to add a thank
ahead.
you, Kyle. You've been really, really helpful throughout this entire process, and I just want to extend my gratitude for all your help.
Thank you, Commissioner Camargo. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I want to echo Commissioner Concepcion, Kyle, to you, but also the whole team, right? And I think when we look at all this work once a month, we forget who's behind the scenes. And it's, and I'm still learning our departments, but, to the investigators, to the licensing team, to HR, there's a lot of work being done at this commission. So I just want to say kudos to all of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item?
I don't want to be the lone guy out.
I was trying to give you that opportunity, Commissioner Stebbins. Go ahead, please.
Happy to thank Director Potvin and his entire team. It's just great work, and there's a lot, obviously, that goes into it, as you can see.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Potvin. Try not to let that go to your head too much, but thank you very much again for your hard work and your team's hard work. Really appreciate it.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, have a good day. Let's move on. We have 4 topics, as I mentioned, for commission discussion and vote. The first is updated guidance on seed to sale tracking. I'll just provide a brief introduction. This document primarily reflects updates based upon changes we made in our last round of regulations, although there are a couple of new topics that were introduced here at the request of industry. Mr. Executive Director, will you walk us through this, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, this is largely an administrative update based on the changes in regulation. The vast majority are updating definitions, for instance. There's a few references throughout relative to the product catalog as well, which is obviously a new requirement in trying to bring some clarity that we have been getting questions from industry as far as how to actually upload those photos and what needs to be included, for instance. So those things, again, I think are largely administrative or ministerial. There are 2 items I wanted to just call your attention to and obviously seek your approval of, which is why, for instance, this document is before you today. The first is a concept of fresh frozen cannabis. So we do have the 15-pound batch limit on dried and cured dry weight flower. However, fresh frozen has not been dried and has not lost that water weight yet. So what we've proposed in this document is an equivalency standard, which is essentially 4 to 1. It's been something we've worked collaboratively with industry on, and it's based on questions we've been getting from cultivators specifically. So that is a policy question for you, and one that I think our staff has worked really diligently on in order to accommodate the industry's questions. And you'll find that on page 8 of the draft guidance. The second item is relative to, you may recall, the 3-bin rule. This is something that popped up early in the adult use industry as far as how to organize your inventory. This is usually from a wholesale standpoint of wholesale bulk product, which is then brought into a retail environment. Usually it's supposed to be stored in a vault environment, but as they break out that inventory, we've asked them to keep it to 3 bins, no more than 50 pounds, and those bins need to be stacked. The introduction of beverages into the industry has led to some questions relative to how do beverages and those manufacturers comply with the 3-bin rule. What we're proposing is in the context of a beverage that no more than 10 cases can be assigned to a metric tag, and we further define a case as being 24 beverages. The 24 beverage element is consistent with the larger beverage industry, for instance, the soda or beer, for instance. And so again, that's really an accommodation for our beverage manufacturers, making sure that they are able to comply and that we give them some clarity on what exactly compliance is. So again, those are 2 real policy questions I wanted to put before the commission. The other changes that are reflected are largely updates based on the new regulations. Happy to take any questions you may have and want to give our staff a lot of credit for, again, collaborating with industry where possible and being responsive to their questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Executive Director. Are there questions for the Executive Director on this topic? Mr. Camargo, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Sean, do you want to talk a little bit about just the sort of like external outreach you all did for this process and just to gather information and, you know, opinions from the outside? Sure,
and thank you. I think this is the first draft of the seed to sale guidance was pending for quite some time. It was largely, it was something that was compiled based on a lot of questions we were getting from our industry, our licensees, and questions we were fielding to Metric to get their responsiveness as far as how do we do this as an agency. As you actually, as new commissioners may not recall, but I'll certainly fill in those gaps here. We put it out for public comment, we received public comment, we brought those questions to Metric, and it's really hopefully a guidance document for both us as far as how we're going to enforce regulations and identify those regulations and how industry can adapt to and really make sure that when they put their data into Metric, they're doing it in a compliant as well as consistent way. As you saw during this meeting and also through our open data platform, we rely on that data. We also don't, in the open data context, we publish it. So the more consistent it is, the more reliable it is, and the more that other industries, other industry participants or researchers are able to rely on it in a consistent way. As far as these 2 questions, they were raised directly by licensees. as far as how do we do this? And obviously we're grateful when industry comes to us and says, we'd like to comply. How exactly do we go about doing that? We want to be really responsive in those instances. And so the 4-to-1 on the fresh frozen was really a collaborative effort between our licensees and specifically Geneve, our lab and testing analyst, as well as some investigators and enforcement counsel. So I give them a lot of credit for being not so much creative, but responsive there. The beverage question came up from beverage manufacturers. That's since the first guidance document was authored and published and approved by the commission, we've had a few beverage manufacturers enter the space. And so as they work through some unique circumstances in their specific product, we wanted to be responsive to them as well. They did pose really thoughtful questions about it's heavier, it takes up more physical space. 3 bins doesn't really apply or wouldn't apply consistently or fairly. So think of 3 bins full of pre-rolls and the amount of product that would include versus 3 bins full of beverages and what that would include. It would really force them to unnecessarily use more tags than would be required. And so we think this is a fair compromise in between. There is no equivalency as far as 3 bins equals 50 pounds or equals 10 cases, but it's more of a, what do we think is a reasonable approach here? And 10 cases, and cases being defined as 24 beverages, I think is that reasonable middle ground. And obviously, as industry has more questions, we'd be open-minded to them as well, and we would intend to engage directly with them.
Thank you. Other questions, Commissioner Camargo? Other questions from Commissioner Stebbins or Concepcion?
Yeah.
Okay. My thanks to the executive director and staff on this. I do have the history of the seed to sale guidance and the number of iterations we've gone through. I know the work involved, and I know the responsiveness that's been shown to the industry. So thank you, Sean and staff on this. Mr. Executive Director, do you want to propose a motion on this? And I'll get one of the commissioners to make that motion, please.
Sure. I would seek a motion to approve the guidance as presented and as presented in the public meeting packet.
Okay. Thank you very much. Commissioner Stebbins, would you make that motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please? Commissioner Camargo? I'm not able to hear you right now.
Sorry, I was on mute. Second.
Second. Thank you very much. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Aye. Let the record show that the commission approves the motion by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. And once again, Mr. Executive Director, thanks very much for your leadership and the work of you and staff on this. Thank you. The next topic is discussion of concerning investment proposals to economic empowerment and social equity applicants. I would like to introduce this topic, and I intend on making some closing comments after the presentation and discussion. Let me start by saying our concerns about some of the terms that some prospective investors are proposing to economic empowerment and social equity applicants, potentially in violation of our regs, or at least in violation of the spirit of our legislative mandates on equity, are not new. Some of you will recall that former Commissioner Title and I wrote a memo to the social equity program participants talking about red flags and watchouts in terms of investment proposals they might be receiving. We've had at least 2 and perhaps more discussions at the commission on this topic. So again, this is not a new topic. Unfortunately, the dearth of financing options available to economic empowerment and social equity applicants creates a situation where some prospective entrepreneurs may feel like they have no option but to consider these proposals. Anecdotally, there's been a recent uptick in complaints received by commissioners and staff, likely driven by the authorization of our delivery courier and delivery operator license types and the period of exclusivity that those license types have. And because of that uptick, we feel it's appropriate to revisit this topic again, not for the first time, but we feel it's important to revisit and discuss it again. We have asked staff to address two issues for us. First is to collect more information on the kinds of contracts and terms being offered. And then second, given jurisdictional limitations, to flesh out some potential actions that we or other government agencies might be able to take. Let me comment on jurisdiction for a second. We do have the right to review, and we do review all contracts during the application review process, and we can and will and have taken action in cases where our regulations would be violated, particularly with respect to limitations on control. And while it is not our role to pass judgment on what constitutes a reasonable terms, we want to ensure that our applicants are aware of all of the resources available to them if the terms being proposed cross the line into unfairness. I want to thank Cedric Sinclair and the team that he has worked with for the work he is about to present, and I very much look forward to the ensuing discussion. Cedric?
Hello, Chairman. Thank you. So as you mentioned, a number of constituents have reached out to flag concerns about contracts in the industry, particularly equity applicants who are eligible for the delivery license during the exclusivity period. In some of the cases, the reported behavior may be within the letter of the law, but doesn't reflect the spirit of our regulations. And in other circumstances, there are concerning accusations that are potentially in violation of regulations and/or state law. In these situations, I want to clarify that this discussion is largely based on reported activity, and our licensing and enforcement team would ultimately determine if a contract violates our regulations through their standard licensing process after the application has been submitted. However, some of the common themes raised are reports of terms and conditions that attempt to hide true ownership of the business through equity shares that meet the established threshold for prioritized applicants, but layers on management fees that siphon additional revenue and establishes a relationship that may represent more than 49% of the business's equity or managerial control. Another reoccurring theme identified is right to first refusal or call clauses that puts the investor in position to control the establishment once the exclusivity period ends if the licensee is unable to meet the terms of the loan. And the most concerning aspect of these contracts is the aggressive repayment terms that increase the likelihood of an entrepreneur's business being underwater, requiring them to activate the aforementioned clauses and potentially lose managerial control of their business. The third bullet really highlights a need for the Commission to continuously monitor our own programming and ensure our vendors are engaging with participants appropriately. We've received reports of an SEP vendor targeting program participants for 9.9% of the business in exchange for access to templates, municipal contacts, and investor lists. This presents a very uneven power dynamic where participants may perceive this as Commission-sanctioned activity and feel obligated to comply with the unfair terms. Again, this is based on fairly regular reports, but not necessarily verified as fact at this time. So in response to the reports and accusations, our SEP staff, licensing enforcement team, and the general counsel have continued to monitor for matters of concern and are utilizing some of our well-established enforcement tools, as well as constituent education to ensure applicants, licensees, and their investors remain well within the guardrails of relevant regulations and laws. So we've previously released a fraud and predatory behavior warning memo, as you noted, highlighting this type of activity, and also delivered SEP coursework and encouraged our vendor-led discussions that ensure participants are aware of sound business structure and are armed with knowledge that enhances their ability to negotiate with investors. After learning about some of the SEP vendor and participation interactions I referenced, we enhanced the terms and conditions of being an SEP vendor for Cohort 3. These contract enhancements include an advanced code of ethics for vendors that is reflective of the standards set for Commission staff, as well as provisions that bar vendors from contracting with participants until at least 6 months after the cohort's programming has ended. And then licensing and enforcement has extremely effective tools that peel back terms and conditions around true ownership of the applications that are before the licensing team. I did want to bring Kyle Potvin, our Director of Licensing, into the discussion to provide some perspective on his team's process before I continue. Kyle?
Thank you. Kyle? please go ahead.
Thank you, Cedric. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As the Chief Communications Officer alluded to, the entire enforcement staff comprised of our licensing staff, our investigation staff, and also our enforcement council staff provide and have at already the ability to do in-depth due diligence reviews throughout our entire licensing process. And we do have a host of compliance tools that are available to us and ultimately the commission. If there's any type of bad acts or any type of non-disclosure that is material that should have been disclosed. For example, during the application stage, some of the agreements that are frequently disclosed are loan agreements. And the first thing that we do and apply is whether any of the terms and any of the people or entities that are contributing capital resources, initial capital resources, would meet the definition of a person or entity having direct and indirect control, because that ultimately would be the catch to get them to fall under the cap limits. So that is really a crucial piece of our initial licensing review, is whether the cap limits, the license cap limits or canopy limits, apply to these people that are in maybe on its face just providing capital resources, but in a sense get in return 10 or more percent, or have 10 or more percent of equity stake, 10 or more percent of the profits from the business. That process continues through the entire licensing process. When after a provisional license is issued and a building is in a facility, in a marijuana establishment is truly getting their operation up and running, that's usually when they have a lot more access to capital resources, many more management or consulting agreements with different companies. And our investigation staff, when they conduct their inspections prior to final licensure, review all of those management, operational, or financial agreements for the same purpose. Is there any ownership that should be listed on a license? Is there any hidden ownership? And if so, there's a proper process to go about doing that, which licensees are notified about, is that change of ownership process. You have to seek approval first, and if you don't seek approval first, you're in nonconformity with the regulations. And that process continues throughout, especially also in the change of ownership process itself, where a lot of these agreements where there's an acquisition or a merger or additional individuals or entities that are acquiring a stake of a business, all of those agreements are reviewed prior to any consideration to the commission. With that being said, every licensee and every applicant has the affirmative duty to present all of this information when it does occur, when it is happening. In some instances, like the change of ownership process, they're required, if there is an ownership stake or it meets certain criteria, to seek commission approval. If we are ever notified or if we become aware during our investigatory steps, either in the licensing process with the licensing team or the investigations team, through any type of inspection or investigation, especially a financial investigation with our FIT team, there's a process that we can follow as far as reviewing all of that information, seeing if an applicant or licensee was, one, did they fully disclose it, and did they seek the appropriate approval prior to doing certain things? Do they meet certain of the requirements? And trying to resolve that issue. And if for some reason the compliance tools that we have available to us under our enforcement measures include, one, having an informal dispute resolution conference where we can try to settle any issues. We can also ultimately propose and recommend to the commission, if there is a bad act, fines, suspension of a license, revocation of a license, denial of a renewal of a license. Those are all extreme cases, but those are all available compliance tools that our licensing team, our investigations team, and our enforcement council team would all take into consideration if for some reason there was any type of bad act that went against the commission's regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Botkin. I appreciate that. Any questions before we go back to the presentation by Mr. Sinclair? Or should we hold off until why don't we hold off till we finish the presentation? If you go ahead, Cedric, please.
Sure. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Chair. So we've also done a lot of work to ensure that there are resources available through partnerships with allied organizations. The executive director recently shared a social equity program update that highlighted development of informal partnerships that provide wraparound services to better inform our applicants and really arm them with knowledge and resources that lessen their reliance on management contracts and enhance their ability to negotiate terms and conditions with potential investors. For example, the UMass Community Development Clinic has provided some applicants with legal services, and Boston University and Tufts University have both engaged with participants to produce business and marketing portfolios, again, to lessen their dependence on investors for these critical services. So Matt, if you go to the next slide, I'll talk about some of the next steps we have. So we are in the process of updating the memo that the chair mentioned that was previously released in November of 2019. We'll revise the notice with some of the evolved practices of concern, but more importantly, highlight available resources for our applicants and licensees to ensure that they have awareness of other parties that can assist on matters that are outside of the commission's jurisdiction. We currently have an open procurement for SEP vendors and plan to develop new curriculum for our participants that provide greater financial and investor awareness. So again, they are prepared for negotiations and truly understand both the short and long-term impacts of these relationships. Kyle already went through quite thoroughly the enforcement tools in place. So I won't expound further other than emphasizing that this is an ongoing effort by our licensing and enforcement staff. And so all applications will receive the thorough review. Unfortunately, there will always be investors who intentionally design relationships that technically fall within compliance but are outside the spirit of our regulations, and may ultimately amount to bad business decisions for the applicants and licensees. However, some of these terms and conditions appear to be afoul of state law and may lay within the jurisdiction of other Commonwealth agencies. So it'd be premature to go into depth at this time, but the General Counsel, Director of Government Affairs and Policy, and I are all engaged with other state authorities to, one, raise awareness of the concerning practices, and two, identify external resources for applicants and licensees to utilize if they feel they are victim to usury practices or other contract terms that are in violation of Massachusetts state law. So in addition to these discussions with government entities, we are also continuing that tradition of informal partnerships that we've established with academia and talking to nonprofits and private industry to establish formal partnerships that can provide additional wraparound services, that provide financial literacy, investment best practices, hopefully access to capital and other resources that help our applicants navigate the challenging dynamic we've talked about today. That's where we are in this process, but Kyle and I are happy to take any questions on the matter.
Thank you so much, Cedric, for that really thoughtful report and all the work behind it. Let me turn it over to my fellow commissioners if they have questions or comments for either you or Kyle. Commissioners? Commissioner Camargo?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for bringing this topic to the forefront. I think it's very important. I think there's a lot of shady terms happening out there, and a lot of stuff just out there is the pink elephant in the room. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of vulnerable folks out here, and I just think that this is really important. So thank you for bringing this up. You know, I thought about something while you all were going through the presentation is, you know, I'm wondering if there's some kind of hotline for folks to call, or, you know, where can folks call? I know that folks can call us, I think, for questions or clarity, but I'm just curious if at a higher level within the Attorney General's office or anything like that, do we have some kind of hotline or one of those sort of consumer buyer beware situation hotlines? And I see Commissioner, Chairman, I see you laughing, but yeah.
No, I think it's a great idea. I really think it's a great idea. So thank you for raising it, Commissioner.
Sure. So, Commissioner, we absolutely are looking into just those type of resources. We're still in discussion with a few of the Commonwealth's agencies, and so we really want to close out and make sure we have the widest view of what resources are available for our applicants. But we certainly intend to tap into statewide resources that are available today and seeing what innovative partnerships we can really develop to create additional resources for our participants.
If I could, I appreciate that, Cedric. But as you said, Commissioner Camargo, any one of the commissioners will respond to any complaints on this, as well as our licensing staff. I'm sorry, I'm speaking for you, Mr. Bachman, but I'm sure you'd agree. So I guess the request is anytime something like this is happening or there's concerns about this, reach out to a commissioner, reach out to our staff. We will respond.
Thank you.
Any
other questions or comments from other commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Stebbins.
Nice presentation. Appreciate the great work of the two teams working on this. I'm especially interested in the bullet around the new SEP curriculum. When our SEP applicants come through the door, this is kind of the first touch that they have with the commission, and getting that kind of enhanced awareness right up front, I think will hopefully limit some of these problems going forward. So appreciate the work to make that one of the initial steps.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm sorry, Cedric, Mr. Sinclair, did you have something you were going to say?
Oh yeah, I was just going to use it as a moment for a shameless plug that we have the SEP available, and absolutely, if there are companies that have specialty that may be of value to our SEP participants, please take a look at that RFR and submit, and we would love to have as much competency for our program as possible.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I guess if it's okay, then as I mentioned, I would like to just make a few closing comments before we move on to the next topic. Let me be clear. We are absolutely committed to creating an equitable industry. I think that's been a theme from day one and continues. And in that context, we're watching this, and we will take action if appropriate, either by ourselves or, as Cedric said, in conjunction with other state agencies. I fervently believe that this can be a win-win. Good businesses backed by investors offering reasonable terms by which both parties can prosper. And I fully expect to see that be the primary way we go forward. And I also want to be sure that I'm not painting with too broad of a brush. I know that many investors are trying to both do well and do good, and I applaud that. But for those who attempt to violate either the letter or the spirit of the law or our regulations, let me just say simply, it will be discovered and it will be stopped. Thank you. Let us move on to the next topic, which is guidance on the retail sale of hemp. This is a continuation of a conversation that was started with our executive director at our last meeting, and I know Sean and staff, as well as MDAR, have done an enormous amount of work in the last month on this topic, and I think have made great progress. So let me turn it over to the executive director to talk about where we're at and the guidance that we're recommending for vote and approval. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Commission, you have before you a draft of a guidance to our licensees relative to the retail sale of hemp. This is a product that our staff has worked on a great deal, as you indicated, over the past month. It's also something I described at our last meeting as we had to write it up and then see where things landed. So as we've been drafting, we do believe that a guidance at this point is sufficient relative to the retail sale of consumer-ready hemp product. So this guidance document is in many ways a statement to specifically our retailers, which indicates if you would like to wholesale in and then sell to consumers consumer-ready hemp products, this is the way you may go about it. It does ask them to include a number of items and clarifies how we would consider those items in the context of hitting the supply chain and whether or not it's required to be tracked through metric or not. So very briefly, as you may recall, as we discussed at our last meeting, the FY21 budget did include an outside section allowing our licensees to access and utilize Massachusetts hemp-derived products and really facilitate a relationship between Massachusetts hemp farmers and cannabis or marijuana establishments. It did not change in any way the jurisdiction over either industry, though. So the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources is the exclusive, or does maintain exclusive jurisdiction over hemp. We maintain jurisdiction over cannabis, and I believe we're both exercising that authority appropriately. So it does, however, allow our establishments, the amendment to the statute, to take actions relative to hemp and hemp products. And as I indicated, this guidance document that's before you does allow for marijuana retailers to purchase and sell consumer-ready hemp products. I keep using the phrase intentionally consumer-ready hemp products because it has significance in the MDAR space, which is there are certain products that MDAR allows to be sold to consumers and to the public, and then certain products that may not be. And that's obviously based on MDAR's rules or, as we pointed out in our previous memo to the Commission, guidance from the FDA as well. So the federal government, as you may recall, legalized the cultivation and primarily research into hemp. We do ask that if it's going to be sold to consumers in this guidance document, that it include an insert, which does identify that this product was not manufactured consistent with or under the regulatory scheme of the Cannabis Control Commission, and that there be some information provided if there is a question about the product that a consumer may have, how they may go about answering that question. We do consider hemp to be similar to, we would treat it similar to a marijuana accessory, so think glassware or a t-shirt or something along those lines. Therefore, we do not require it to be tracked in our seed to sale system, and it would not be subject to that excise tax that marijuana products would be. However, it would be subject to the normal sales tax, and we do suggest that they reach out to DOR if there's questions relative to that. And obviously, with any guidance document, there's a normal disclaimer that this is not legal advice, and should they have any further questions, they are advised to seek legal counsel. That's really a general overview of what we think is a pretty straightforward guidance document. I would ask you to approve it. In approving it, I would ask you to give me the ability to make some just ministerial edits or updates that would be consistent with just some verbiage relative to, for instance, the draft before you references hemp manufacturers. We've, in our research, we'd like to clarify that to being processors, just to make that a specific reference back to an MDAR rule and guidance. So again, nothing substantive will change in the document. I would just ask for some leeway to make ministerial edits in order to publish it as soon as possible and get this out to our retailers specifically. And always happy to answer any questions you may have.
So, Mr. Executive Director, thank you. And when we get to the point of asking for a motion, I'll ask you to articulate what you just outlined and get one of the commissioners to make a motion. But before we do that, are there questions or comments on this for the Executive Director?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Stebbins.
Just to, as we pointed out at our last meeting, I think it's still fair to say that there are still a number of issues that have some legal entanglements around them, but require us to continue to work with our counterparts over at the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. But I do want to compliment our executive director and the team and our counterparts at MDAR for addressing this issue quickly. I think we had characterized it as low-hanging fruit, but it's hopefully a first step, and one we can take today and continue our efforts to support those folks cultivating and processing hemp across Massachusetts.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins. Other comments or questions for the Executive Director? The Commissioner, go ahead, Commissioner Camargo.
Yeah, just a comment in general. I just want to thank folks. I know I've received a lot of emails around this issue, so I just want to thank people for reaching out and vocalizing it. And like Commissioner Stebbins says, you know, it's a step in the right direction. So thank you to all those constituents who've reached out.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Then, Mr. Executive Director, would you mind putting in a motion, language for a motion that you'd like to see to both approve the guidance document you said, give you the authority to make ministerial changes and then publish it?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would seek a motion to approve the guidance subject to ministerial edits required for publication.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you make that motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the motion by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Once again, Mr. Executive Director, thank you to you and to staff for your hard work. And, you know, I know this has been going on for a while, but particularly over the last month since our last meeting, it's just, I really appreciate the hard work and the great progress that's been made. And like my fellow commissioner said, I think this is a really important first step. I also want to thank our colleagues over at MDAR for their collaboration in this process. The next item is we have 3 staff recommendations on applications for responsible vendor training. Mr. Executive Director, could you introduce our staff member who will present this?
Sure, I'm happy to, and I'm excited to. So you have before you 3 applications, as you indicated, for responsible vendor training. The responsible vendor training review process is similar to, but in fact different than our licensing process, and it is now under the supervision and oversight of Olivia Laramie, who's before you today and ready to present on the 3 specific applications for your consideration. And she or I are happy to take any questions you may have relative to them.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director, and Olivia, welcome.
Thank you.
Look forward to your presentation, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Hoffman. So I'm going to start with just a brief introduction to the Responsible Vendor Training Program, as we have 3 commissioners who are voting for the first time on this certification. So the Responsible Vendor Training curriculum is part of the training that marijuana establishment agents are required to complete prior to performing their job functions. Each RVT vendor is certified for 2 years. There are currently 14 certified RVT vendors. There are 3 responsible vendor training applicants presented before you for your consideration today, and the following applicants for your consideration are seeking 2-year certification for responsible vendor training. The entities are titled Cannabis Med, 420 Trainers, and Green Cultured. The first entity, Cannabis Med, is from Auburn, Massachusetts. They will conduct their curriculum via in-person instruction in their Auburn offices, as well as with a self-learning online format. The total length of time for their course is 4 hours, including 1 final exam that will require a score of at least 70% for each trainee to receive a passing grade. So again, before you for consideration is Cannabis Med for RVT certification. The staff recommends your approval of Cannabis Med for a 2-year RVT certification.
Thanks, Olivia. Why don't we do this one by one? So before I ask for a motion, are there questions for Olivia or Sean on this topic, on this application? Commissioner Camargo, I was trying to. Did you have a question?
Sorry, of course, I'm on mute. Sorry, Olivia, thank you so much. Chairman, I just have some general questions about the process. I'm happy to ask them afterwards.
Well, it's up to you. If they're relevant to the votes that we're about to take, I'd prefer that we do it beforehand. If they're just, you know, comments about how your thoughts about going forward, then we'll do it afterwards. It's your call totally. Which would you prefer?
I think I'll wait till we vote on them. They're general questions, so I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you. Any other questions before I ask for a motion? Then could I ask Commissioner Concepcion, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on certifying responsible Cannabis Med for responsible vendor training? I'm sorry, it's been a long meeting. Let me try that again. Commissioner Concepcion, would you please make a motion to approve staff recommendation on Cannabis Med?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion? Commissioner Stebbins?
Yeah.
Can you second that motion, please, Commissioner Stebbins?
I can if I can unmute myself. Second.
You did a good job. Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please. Are you muted?
Oh, geez. Aye.
Commissioner Concepcion. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation on the responsible vendor training application from Cannabis Med by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. I will, just before I turn it back over to Olivia, to say I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to getting back to doing these meetings in person. Olivia, go ahead, please, on the next applicant, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The next entity is 420 Trainers. They're from Plattsburgh, New York. They will conduct their curriculum via an in-person instructor-led format as well as through an online format. The total length of time for their course is 5.5 to 6 hours, including one final exam that will again require a score of at least 70% for each trainee to receive a passing grade. So before you for consideration is 420 Trainers for RVT certification. The staff recommends your approval for 420 Trainers for a 2-year certification.
Thank you, Olivia. Are there questions or comments on this application? Then could I ask, first of all of my fellow commissioners to take themselves off of mute? And then could I ask Commissioner Concepcion, could you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation on the responsible vendor training application from 420 Trainers LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
I will second.
Thank you very much. Let the record show that Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation on the responsible vendor training application from 420 Trainers LLC by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Next up, please, Olivia, is Green Cultured.
Yes. So the final entity, Green Cultured, is from Denver, Colorado. They will conduct their curriculum via an online virtual learning format. The length of time for their course is 6 hours, including 5 quizzes and 1 final exam that will again require a score of at least 70% for each trainee to receive a passing grade. Again, before you for consideration is Green Cultured for RVT certification. The staff recommends your approval of Green Cultured for a 2-year RVT certification.
Thank you, Olivia. Are there questions? Then could I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation with respect to responsible vendor training applicant Green Cultured?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite, was that an aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the staff recommendation for the responsible vendor training application from Green Cultured by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, and Hoffman with none opposed. Thank you. Olivia, are there any other applications to be considered at this point in time?
There are no more applications at this time.
Okay. Well, then I want to just thank you very much for you and your team's hard work on this, and really appreciate it, and look forward to welcoming you back to future commission meetings.
Thank you so much, Chairman.
Sure. Before we move on, Commissioner Camargo, you had some questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. And first of all, Olivia, I would say thank you for calling us new commissioners. We're trying to be as new as long as we can. But I think, Olivia, I think also, I appreciate your comment, because this is the first time that we're voting on RVT training. And I know that you worked really hard on it. Commissioner Stebbins, I know, partnered with you. So thank you to Commissioner Stebbins for that. But also, I think this is an opportunity for us to educate our community, right, in terms of some of the trainings that we do have going on, and some of the opportunities that we do have going on at the commission. And I think, I've conducted a few tours already, and I think that, the front line is so important, and this training is so key, right? So I think it's my quick couple of questions, for I guess for me to know, but also I think I want to share with the community at that is, how do we as a CCC conduct sort of outreach and education on the vendor opportunity, right? How do we do that? Where does it live on our website? So that's one question. If you want to answer that, I'll ask you my other questions after.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I want to start by just reminding everyone that RVT vendors are independent and separate from licensees, and they have no additional interest in the Massachusetts marijuana industry. Outreach from the commission is done primarily through our communications department. The commission's website offers information about the RVT program and how entities can apply. That can be found on the research page of our new website. Certified RVT trainers are responsible for their own advertising and marketing once they're approved by commission vote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Olivia. That's key. And I think it's important for folks to know in the community. I know that a lot of our partners out there are televising this parallel. I know the Young Jerks are always putting this up while we're speaking. So I think it's a good opportunity to, again, let the community know that this stuff is here. My other question is, I know that, I guess, the medical training in this, I believe there's no medical training, right, in terms for the bud tenders, but can you talk a little bit about that and in the process?
Yeah, of course. So the short answer is you're correct. There is no medical training. The curriculum does include a brief overview of the science regarding marijuana's effect on the human body. However, marijuana establishment agents are reminded not to provide medical advice to customers. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that the slide that Sean shared earlier today, right? We have 94,631 medical patients. So I think that's important to know and be reminded. I guess the last question is, how many of these companies are minority owned or DBEs, and do we collect that data?
Yeah, that's a great question. Currently, we do not require or track DBE status for RVT applications. We do, of course, encourage minority-owned, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses to apply. Applicants at the time may self-identify as a diversity and industry ownership applicant in the summary portion of the application if they wish, but at the time there are no specific prompts for them to do so.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Olivia, thank you so much. I think those are all my questions. Again, I think it's just a good opportunity. You know, part of, I guess my motto is access and opportunities. And I think that this is a really good just opportunity for folks to know more about the RVT training. And I know that there's more to come. And thank you, Olivia, for all your work and your team on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Margo.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Are there other questions for Olivia or Sean on this topic?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please, Commissioner Stebbins.
Thank you. I do just want to take a moment to thank Olivia for her time and Dr. Johnson as well. We took the opportunity to walk through the program with me last week prior to today's meeting and looking at these new applicants. I've also enjoyed the opportunity to have some conversations with Olivia and Dr. Johnson, and I know they have a lot on their plate right now about the RVT program. What kind of RVT 2.0 might look like as we think down the line with the goal of an expanded curriculum. But Olivia has been great. She's already participated on a couple of calls with myself to get feedback from some folks in the industry. So I thank her for her time and Dr. Johnson's as well, and look forward to working with both of them going forward. But nice job, Olivia.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins. I look forward to working with you further too.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
I'll just add my thanks to you, Olivia, and the research team for your work and for a really thoughtful and thorough presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Executive Director, any closing comments on this before we move on?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, great. Let's keep going, Matt. Next slide, please. So as I said at the beginning, I'm not aware of any topics that need to be discussed that were not included in the agenda that was published more than 48 hours ago. So let me suggest that we'll close by going to our next meeting date, which will be on Thursday, June 17th. Once again, remote via Teams, and once again at 10 a.m. The next slide, which has future meeting dates, is tentative. I want to stress they're subject to change, but just for planning purposes, this is the timeline for the rest of the year for our public meetings. There being no further business before the commission, I would like to ask Commissioner Concepcion to make a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Concepcion made the motion to adjourn, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Concepcion.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Aye. Let the record show that this commission voted by a vote of 4 in favor. Commissioners Concepcion, Camargo, Stebbins, and Hoffman to adjourn at, with none opposed, to adjourn at 12:44 p.m. on May 13th, 2021. My thanks to staff. My thanks to Matt, particularly for his management of the meeting. My thanks to my fellow commissioners for the conversations and the decisions we made today, and to all be safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.